Hi, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Risk, where our goal is to connect, engage, and inspire each other as we build a global community of risk practitioners. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal, and today I'm super excited to welcome Dr. Marc Rubinstein. He's the head of medical safety at Grail, and previously he was in a senior role in medical safety at Philips and other organizations as well. So I can't wait to get started with this conversation with Marc. With that, Marc, welcome to the show. How are you today?
Good morning, Naveen. Thank you very much for having me. I'm doing great this morning.
So, Marc, I'm very curious to hear a little bit more about your personal journey transitioning as a clinician into medical device industry. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. I think this is important for all of us clinicians and physicians trying to move from the traditional clinical world into the industry. I'm a foreign medical graduate. I graduated medical school from Mexico and then moved to the States, did my training in general surgery. But during training, I felt that the medical system in the US, it was not what I was expecting. It was a little bit different what I grew up, and I was not able to give my full potential as a clinician helping patients. So I decided to change gears a little bit and move into the industry where I can have an impact at a broader aspect with patients instead of direct access. I was fortunate enough to start my career at a larger company. I started my career at Baxter, and I had a great mentor. My first manager was amazing, and he taught me all that you need to know about medical affairs and open that door, which is sometimes the hardest part, right? Getting your foot into the door and having somebody to trust in you and getting into medical affairs, into the medtech world.
Yeah. Now, we were just talking before we went live on the show, and you shared with me that you are in a very interesting company right now where they have decided to include medical safety right from the beginning, and it's within the quality function. And tell us a little bit more about how this sort of a setup works in the favor of the patient's long run. Tell us how it improves medical safety and risk management from the beginning.
Sure. I just have to make a disclaimer. All this are my personal views and represent my personal views only. So I currently work at Grail, which is a smaller startup company. We're working on multi-cancer early detection. We have an LDT product, but it's not FDA approved. Leadership at this company decided the medical safety was a very important aspect of the company and decided to bring medical safety early on before it's FDA approved to ensure that everything we're doing and everything that we're trying to build and get approved is putting the patient safety in the front, in the center of every decision. So they made a decision to bring medical safety early on, which is usually not seen. Medical safety maybe is brought up
Yeah.
towards the end or post-market, right? Not even
Yeah.
pre-market.
Right.
But in this case, they wanted to do everything right and ensure that we're doing more good than harm to the patient. So that's the reason why they decided to bring and have that position for this company.
Oh, that is very good. And I know that you have a lot of experience in the medical diagnostics area, and risk management proves to be quite challenging in that area, right? Because we are providing a result that is used for diagnosis or making some clinical decision. And sometimes it becomes very challenging for us to link that directly to the patient harm. Can you share a few insights that you have gathered through your experience? How best we can do that? Can you share some examples of where there might be challenges in managing risk of diagnostic products or some best practices?
Sure. Like I put this, it's the same as put medicine. Medicine is not a black and white thing. It's a little bit of black, a little bit of white, and a big shade of grays in between, right? And you have to take all your clinical knowledge and every experience to make your best decision. Medical safety is not different from that. And depends on the company and the product that you use. Those shade of grays are smaller or larger. If you're in a company with a medical device, an implantable medical device, maybe that shades of gray are smaller and it's easier to tie an adverse event or an issue or a safety signal that happened to that product. Diagnostics, and depends on the diagnosis that you are, it's a lot harder, and it becomes critical for medical safety with the understanding on how the product works, how it's clinically used, and in collaboration with your risk management team to determine the issue has any relationship to your device or not, or it was something else. One of the companies that I used to work, for example, to bring it to the table, they have a device where it diagnosed a intraoperative level of anticoagulation.
Mhm.
So in this case, if your device fails and it gives you a signal that your patient's not properly anticoagulated, you're going to give them more anticoagulation. And then that can
Mhm.
create an issue in the middle of a surgery. You can have a patient bleed excessively and have a hard time stopping. But
Mhm.
also, on the other hand, if you don't anticoagulate it correctly and it's giving you a signal that you don't need to give more anticoagulation, that patient can have a clot and create further damage. So, in those cases, it's critical to understand the whole patient situation. If you get a complaint that the patient bled or had a clot in the middle of surgery, to assign causality to our device, to a failure to the device, or something else causing that. Because not always is a device,
Mhm.
but sometimes can be the device.
Yeah. So, what I'm hearing you say is that when we are doing our risk analysis, first we have to build this sort of sequence of events where one event may lead to many other possibilities, many possibly that may end up affecting the patient. And to me, it seems like without clinical input in this conversation, it might be very difficult for people to build that sequence of events, either completely or correctly. Does that sound about right to you?
100%. I think a lot of it depends on the companies, but a lot of the times we worked on the FMEAs and part of the risk management, where medical safety is a key component. Medical safety will lead to the harms, and what is the severity of that harm. You have your engineers, your quality people helping you with the hazard situations, but it's a team collaboration. I think that's part of medical safety. It's always as a team collaboration in order to get the best results and get the best outcome for your patients. But with all that, a lot of the times you put something on writing and it not end up being quite exactly how it's written. And then you
Yeah.
have to do a little bit of work, interpretation, investigation, talking to the clinicians that were involved with the incident and determine what is the causality. But yes, I think your risk management files, your FMEAs play a huge role on this to guide you where you want to.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point because one of the areas where I have seen problems, and in fact, there has been an FDA warning letter where it was a major diagnostics company. It's not like they don't have much experience, but they cited them for underestimating the severity of the potential outcome of an inaccurate result. Now, this could happen in my mind if there isn't enough collaborative conversation up front to understand how the patient might be impacted by inaccurate result. And if we don't have that insight, I think we might underestimate severity. That's so it sounds to me that really understanding how the patient might be impacted from that incorrect result is key. And I don't think this knowledge or understanding is possible without clinical engagement. Does that sound about right to you?
It does. And I think it's the same way that when we were asking, when you're creating the FMES, for example, I'm not an engineer. So I asked the engineers from the R&D team, is like, how does the device work? You tell me if this can cause fire. I don't know if it's possible or not. If it does, then I can tell you what that harm can be to the patient. It has to be that collaboration where everyone has their own expertise and brings that expertise to the table to put it together. And the clinicians are the ones who can tell you how that can affect the patient, how in what severity of that harm can be, and the magnitude of that harm. And then without underestimating, because if you don't know, you can probably say, well, I don't think this is going to happen. And still, it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
In reality, it is. And yeah, so I agree with that.
Here's a key point to emphasize for everybody. Severity and probability are two components of risk, but they are kind of orthogonal, meaning that they are independent from each other. And that is where I think clinicians play a key role in understanding the severity of the potential outcome, and engineers play a very key role in understanding or estimating probability of that occurrence through
Correct.
calculations, right? And we just can't say that just because it's very unlikely to happen, the patients are not going to get hurt. So that's
Correct.
that's that's a key point to emphasize. Now let's also be honest, right? When we are doing this risk analysis during early in the design and development, even with if we have clinical input, we don't know everything, right? We're going to learn a lot in the post-market phase, correct? So can you say a little bit about how you go about gathering this insight and knowledge and understanding from post-market data, where we're generally very focused on reporting complaints and adverse events? We are not really looking at the signal and the data. Can you say a little bit more about how to do that really well and then feed it back into our risk analysis. Can you share some examples?
Sure. I think the post market is very important, and you can do it, of course, with the complaints coming in, and trending those complaints, seeing if there's an issue that the complaints are starting to build up and causing a signal before a harm actually happens, right? A lot of the times you get complaints without an actual harm or severity big enough that it's reportable, but that doesn't mean that it's not trending upwards, where that's an internal signal that you should start looking into that device, that assay. What is causing that problem? Is an issue with the manufacturing? Is an issue with how you're running your assays? Did you change a supplier that is causing an issue that you didn't foresee? But also it's looking into the literature. What is the literature showing? Is there any complaints on the literature coming out? Or working with real world evidence, bringing that into the equation can be done. The other thing that we do a lot in diagnostics is registries. If you're able to get a registry in where you bring data from the patients after they've used the device, they've used the diagnostic tool, you trend and you can look into for signals that can feed into the risk management and then take some actions.
Yeah, yeah, and we will learn a whole lot of new issues during use. And I had Berina Brandt from Medtronic a couple of weeks ago on our show, and she actually shared a very interesting insight with us. But I want to share with you and our audience is that our first instinct when we get to when we start doing investigations as part of kappa is to say, hey, what's wrong with the product? Is it an engineering issue? What is going on? But often it is a use issue. And we won't learn anything about that until we go and actually talk to people who are using it and observe them while it is being used. So I think that is why involving clinicians, to me, even in your investigations, is very important. Great.
Yeah, and one key for that, also from a safety perspective, to avoid a complication, is the educational part, right? If you have a device that requires a lot of technique, it's very important for the education before the device is used. Or for a diagnostic, how to interpret those results. So education, medical affairs, your MSLs play a key role here to ensuring that the users and the patients know what to expect and how to use it properly to avoid any potential misuse that can happen. Because at the end of the day, if there's a lot of misuse, it still goes back to the company that we were not clear enough to tell the user how to use the device.
And maybe you will learn about that and bring it back into your risk analysis. So guys, we are kind of halfway through. And if you're just joining, first of all, welcome to all of you. Today, I'm having a conversation with Dr. Marc Rubinstein, and we are focusing on risk management of diagnostic devices. Now, Marc, we have some excellent comments coming in from our audience where Dr. Dakash is sharing. With devices, there are two components to complaints, actually three: product, procedure, and patient. And a combination of any of these is what is needed to be monitored. And we need a full picture. We need a big picture. And that's why cross-functional collaboration is so useful. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Takash. You're also pointing out that usability and human factors are key. So guys, this is the beauty of our platform here, right? We are learning from each other. So please don't hold back. Share your questions and comments and thoughts in the chat, and we will discuss them. So Marc, let's continue our conversation. You are in a scenario where you are sort of working in the pre-market space, building an innovative device and getting ready to launch in the product. Can you help us understand how post-market information from a similar device or your past experience can help you in the development of a new innovative device?
Sure. So if you have other devices similar to yours in the market, you can look at what they've done. What is it out there? What complications are they having? Can go into the mod database and look what complications are reporting. Look at their labeling, and what clinical studies or real world evidence studies have done after the product has been approved, and focus on that to bring it back to the company to look into those areas to assure that you're not having a blind spot or something that you oversaw when you're creating your risk files, when you're looking for any signal, and when you're building your clinical surveillance team and post-market surveillance team. It's very important to try to broaden the picture so you don't miss anything and you don't get blindsided for something that you thought it was never possible where your diagnostics, and then bring it into consideration when you're building that product.
Yeah, so I think this makes a lot of sense to me and folks in our community who show up week after week to these conversations. We always talk about that, and it seems to me that it's not happening to the extent that it should in the industry. I'll give you like a quick example. Recently, I reviewed a paper which looked at adverse events for devices for the last 20, 25 years. And I was shocked to see one of their conclusions where they said that a majority of adverse events happen within the first year after launch of a device. And this kind of tells me that, hey, maybe we are not bringing back all the learning and understanding from post market into our design process somehow to, to address the issues. And I just want to first confirm that observation with you. Have you felt that way? And if so, why do you think that is happening? What are some of the barriers that is preventing us from bringing this information back into development?
I think if there's not a good collaboration between your teams and to have that loop mechanism of feedback, right? It's important for to have your teams on the field when you launch a product and observing how the users are using it, what are they seeing, positives and negatives, not only the positive things, and bring it back. And maybe it's a little bit of a fear of saying, hey, it's a new product. If we tell them that it's not working, we run the risk of having an issue, not good communication between your commercial teams and your medical team, and bringing that feedback loop to the R&D team and to the cross-team collaboration to ensure that what you're seeing on the field, there's signals, right? We have to address them to avoid any complications. Or if you don't have a specific boundaries or set requirements internally where to address those issues, right? If they're not passing your requirements of number of complaints or issues, it might not trigger for you to investigate further. But I think it's key when you launch a product to have that strong feedback loop mechanism with your field team coming back to the R&D team and addressing all the complaints seriously, because that might be telling you something that you can prevent and address it before it becomes a bigger issue.
Right, great. Thank you for that, Mark. Now, we have a question here from Alex. How do you link cybersecurity risk with patient safety for diagnostics, considering they may not be considered, quote, life-sustaining, unquote?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. And it depends on the diagnostics. Cybersecurity, it's a big key component that maybe if you were to talk 5-10 years ago, it was non-existent, right? The regulations right now with cybersecurity is so important. If you have a device where, even though if it's not life-sustaining, it's giving you critical results that you have to diagnose the patient and guide you to the treatment of that patient by being affected by cybersecurity can completely change the way you treat a patient. I think like everything nowadays that's electronic, cybersecurity and having that so strict it's key to ensure patient safety, because if there's a breach and there's a misdiagnosis which could lead to a wrong treatment, that can affect the patient safety, and then that goes back to the company, of course.
Yeah, and I guess one of the reading between the lines in Alex's question, he's asking how. So I think there are some best practices out there. There's a guidance from AMI. I know the ISO committee, the 14971 committee, is working on including more guidance in the TR 24971 on this issue. So there are a lot of best practices, Alex, out there, which I think we should review and follow as practitioners. The most important part is to have this handshake between patient safety and cybersecurity, because these are two different types of risk assessments. So I hope that helps clarify that a little bit, Alex, but thank you for your question. Mark, we have excellent comments here. One from Dr. Jakash. Again, it's very encouraging to hear other MDs within devices and risk management talk the same language that was seen as unpopular a decade ago, and today makes the sense it always was meant to have. Thank you for that, Dr. Jakash. I think that's what we're trying to do here, bring people together. Now, Roger has a comment here. I worked at a company that hyper-focused on the first 6 months after market release. That is aggressive research to get feedback and report back at the monthly customer feedback meeting. Mark, I think that's a best practice, right? When you are about to launch a product, wouldn't it make sense to have a little bit more aggressive post-market surveillance plan for the first 6, 12, 60, 18 months? I don't know, whatever makes sense. And
I think so. Yeah.
And then transition it to a more sort of a routine surveillance. Wouldn't that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I think at the beginning, especially if it's a new technology where you're changing ways of physicians treating patients or ways of thinking, you definitely have to have a very robust, I will say at least for the first 12 months, because that's where you can learn a lot from what the clinicians are seeing, what issues they're seeing, and then that can feed back to product enhancements, right? That's not only seeing the products, is you saying, hey, how can we do this better to even help patients further? It's not only seeing the bad things, but also seeing good things. And you learn so much, because a lot of the physicians, when they're the early adopters. They're eager to help the patients and share feedback with you. And then also, what are we doing wrong? How can we do it better to make it more bulletproof to ensure the patient is safe, which is our ultimate goal, right? Every medical device company should have that patient centricity and mindset at different levels, right? But we're trying to do what's best for our patients.
Yeah. So, Roger, thank you for sharing that. I think we should recognize that as a best practice. And in my view, if you are following a project management approach to new product launch, like new product development plans that people have and timelines and project management, I think you should make that as a deliverable before launch, that you have a special post-market safety surveillance plan for this particular product so that it doesn't fall through the cracks. I think that would make a lot of sense. So thank you for sharing that. Now we have another comment here from Ed. Our company focused until the feedback was stable. Stable. That's a key word. Very, very good point. That means we need to define criteria, what we mean by stable, and actively went to the facility to obtain the feedback. So, of course, this takes a lot of planning and effort, Mark. And I think what I have seen in my experience is that the product development team, your engineers, they move on to the next project as soon as the product is launched. And we need to build this in our organizational structure to make sure that doesn't happen, that we have the ability to borrow resources during at least the first initial phase. How would we go about doing that? I mean, how would we make a business case for this? Do you have any ideas on that?
I think it's important. Yes, I think once they launch, they want to say, okay, let's go to the next generation.
Correct.
And let's move on. We already spent so much money on this, and then let's
Right.
go out. But I think a mature company will look into. We also have to keep the engineers who build this product as part of the team to sustain this product, because they're going to have issues. We're going to find issues. It's not a matter of yes or no. We will find issues, right? Even if you thought everything through, that's how it happens. So we have to be ready to fix those issues. And how can we fix them quickly to avoid going down the route where it's too late to fix them? If the engineers understand that, it's almost like preventive medicine, right? Put a few people there, treat it early, and that will save the company a lot of money on the long run, instead of waiting until it's too late to bring other people, or bring people who without the experience on how they build that product. So I think, yes, it's important to move to the next generation, but also to keep sustaining and enhancing or fixing what you have on the market if needed.
I don't think it has to be full time. It can be
No,
just part time, right?
right? Is as needed. As long as you devote certain of those people to be part of those meetings, understand what the product is, bring them along, right? Be part of those conversations when you start seeing products, because maybe us as clinicians don't see an issue, but then you have an engineer who say, oh, hold on.
Yeah.
That might be signaling something that it's wrong with a certain component or certain aspect of it, that they can pinpoint it, right? So bottom line is cross collaboration across the organization is key for this. It's from your safety, from risk management, quality, regulatory, but also bring your R&D, your engineers on board.
Yeah. And, I'm actually always very focused on the how piece. So to me, and here, one of the comments from Juan here is leverage your QMS. I think in the QMS, there should be some requirements after the product is launched, that there is a provision for ongoing monitoring at a slightly higher level based on the risk of the product, of course, and the technology sophistication and whatnot. So if we build those requirements, have a project plan, treat this as a project management deliverable, we don't close the new product until all these deliverables are achieved. So that would be one way of doing that, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
In your product life cycle, how do you have it in your different stages, and where does it fit? But yeah, I agree.
Here's further clarification from Juan. Safety is not product specific on its own, but it should be part of your company's SOPs. We can also help create these SOPs so safety carries out product by product. Then it becomes specific as needed. Forest to the trees approach. Yes. So we have to have some built-in mechanism by which we enforce this type of an action.
Correct.
Otherwise, people will forget, not because they want to, but they will forget that. Bijan, you are sharing a nice comment here. Maintaining the corporate knowledge and continuous history on product design is a smart business. So wonderful conversation here, guys. Thank you for your comments and engagement. I really love this. Now we are running short of time. So Marc, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to just process our thoughts and summarize it in 2 or 3 key points. And in the meantime, guys, I'm going to share a few announcements with you. First of all, I'm super excited to share with you that our Let's Talk Risk community has grown, and we are now reaching more than 3,000 people across the world. It is just so fulfilling for me to see this. It's a very mission driven project for me. I'm personally committed, and I really appreciate your support. So we would not be here without your support. I want to see this continue, and I want you to have a voice on this platform. So please keep sharing your comments and perspectives with me. You can always reach out to me one on one, set up just a quick 30 minutes. If you have any suggestions for us to improve this process and improve your experience, I'll be very happy to learn from you. The second point I want to share with you is that I have recently launched a post-market safety surveillance workshop. It's a 4-hour workshop, hands-on experience, a lot of practical insights, advanced tools for detecting signals. It's something like finding a needle in a haystack. I will go through that with you. We will learn about regulatory requirements. We learn about making decisions on those signals. We learn about how to set up a very efficient post-market surveillance process so this doesn't fall through the cracks, like we just talked about this, throwing this information back to R&D or continuous improvement. It doesn't fall through the cracks. And how do you do that? So we'll share all that. If you're interested in joining this workshop, the next session is coming up on April 9th. Please reach out to me and I'll provide you more details. With that, Mark, the floor is yours. If you could share just a couple of key points to take away.
Sure. Thanks again for the opportunity. But I think from a medical safety perspective is try to bring your team early. Try to bring a cross-team collaboration is key throughout pre-market and post-market. Risk management, what you have on your risk management documentation, it's important to close this loop and always have an open loop communication across all teams to get the feedback, act on it, and then also always have the patient at the center of any decision you make.
Wonderful. Thank you for that positive note to end our conversation today, Mark. This was fascinating. Thank you again for your time. Thanks, everybody, for joining today and participating so actively. This is the best part of these conversations, learning from you, learning together. As I've said many times before, this is not a webinar or a lecture. This is a conversation where we engage and learn from each other. With that, I will see you again next week, which, by the way, is going to be another fascinating conversation. We're going to talk about tools for automating your clinical literature review and creating a summary for your clinical evaluation. We're going to talk about some practical examples and these tools. I hope you show up. The announcement has gone on LinkedIn. So once again, thanks, everybody, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.